This story is not about faith as the enemy, it's about people who weaponize it. On the 9th of August 2026, a video started moving through Nigerian phones. A man speaking Yoruba said to be telling Muslims they have the right to keep people who are not Muslims as slaves. By Monday, an aide to the government minister was asking police to arrest him. Now, nobody has proved the clip is him. No police statements, no court case, no full recording. None of that slowed it down, and within 2 days, people were already treating it as fact. So I stopped asking who the man was and started asking why a story nobody had checked could travel that fast. Now, this is why this worked in Nigeria. Cut the country down almost anywhere and you land near the middle. A Pew report counts Muslims at 56%, Christians at nearly 43%. Nobody is a big majority enough to feel safe. So almost everyone who saw that clip saw either an attack on their own religion or a warning about the neighbors. The law is supposed to stay out of it. The Nigerian constitution says Nigeria has no official religion, but 12 northern states run their courts on Sharia law. And the American Religious Freedom Commission says those courts have sometimes been used on people who are not Muslims. So what the law promises and what people actually live are two different promises. When you look at what we have just said, you will realize that a clip does not have to be real to work. Somebody cuts it short. Somebody writes a caption telling you how to feel. Somebody translates it badly. Then it lands in a group chat where everyone already agrees. So nobody checks. By the time it reaches you, it is not a sermon. It is a weapon somebody handed you. Now, I want you to hold that claim about slavery. I'm coming back to it. And Nigeria is not even at war, technically. If an unverified clip can do that in a calm country, what happens where the fighting is real? Now, nothing connects that Nigerian clip to what comes next. No shared people, no coordination. It is the same pattern happening in a much harder place, and Burkina Faso is where you can watch it under real pressure. So how bad is it? Terror activities unalived 5,582 people around the world in 2025 alone. Almost half of that number were unalived in the Sahel alone. And half of the people unalived in the Sahel due to these terror activities were in Burkina Faso. And one armed group was behind 78% of that. In July, Captain Ibrahim Traoré said this: "If this is your Islam, we will fight it. Extremists must change. If they do not, the battle has begun." Now, what he said was in July, but his parliament had already passed a law in June and nobody voted against it. Prison terms and fines were given to what it calls religious abuse. There were new rules on religious schools and on where religious organizations get their money. Now look at those last two, because nobody argues with them. The government forced religious groups to show where their money comes from. If a preacher is paid by people who buy rifles, a country at war has every right to find that out and stop the pipeline. Now there is another part that most people are quiet about. Most of these preachers are not just failing to stop the violence. They stand in front of children, in front of people who were raised to believe that religion is clean, and tell them that the unaliving is holy. That is a trusted man using that trust to send somebody else's son to be unalived. When the recruiting happens inside the mosque, no government can pretend the mosque is out of bounds. Traore didn't just end there. He went further and said his army keeps finding copies of the Quran at militant camps it destroys. Now that tells you what the fighters carry, but it does not tell you what the book causes. You see, millions of West Africans read the same book every day and have never touched a weapon. And most of the people these groups unalive are Muslims themselves. So the question here is not whether the government of Burkina Faso should act. They have to act. The question is who the law lands on. In late May, a Sunni scholar called Mohammed Ishakindo spoke against Burkina draft law against the Sharia in public. He was arrested 2 days later. The Federation of Islamic Associations says nobody explained why. That protest was broken up by the government and the capital's largest Sunni mosque was closed. The government never mentioned where he was held. You see, nobody has accused that imam for planning an attack or for paying a militia. He disagreed with a bill. And that matters for a practical reason. The African Center for Strategic Studies found that JNIM uses army violence against ordinary people to recruit. According to that report, that same law can do two opposite things. Use it on men recruiting fighters and on money nobody can trace, and the insurgency gets weaker. Use it on a scholar who criticized a bill, and you hand the recruiter his next story. Now, watch where the next fear goes, because this stops being about sermons very fast. JNIM has never captured a city and does not need to. What it attacks instead is the fuel road running into Mali from Senegal and Cote d'Ivoire. And each time that happens, prices jump. Now, I want you to think about what that means. If the road is closed, it means fuel does not arrive. And if fuel does not arrive, trucks stop. If trucks stop, the market has no food, the clinic has no medicine, and the farmer decides not to plant. Now, these guys never took the government, they only blocked the road. Now, I want you to put a map on that one. Africa's next plan for the next 30 years is to sell to itself. A factory in Ghana selling into 50 other African countries is the idea behind the free trade area, and it only works if trucks arrive on time. Some of the roads West Africa needs run straight through corridors occupied by these fighters. So the men closing those roads also get to decide how much the rest of us gets to build. Which brings me back to the question inside the title of this video. When fear becomes useful, who gains? You see, I'm careful about the word profit here, because most of what changes hands is not money. Now, let's start with the armed groups, because their gain is much easier to see. If soldiers just searched your village and arrested your neighbor, an armed group does not have to work hard to recruit you. Your own anger does the work, especially if there were casualties in that search. Then we have politicians, they gain cheaply too. You see, building a real record, roads built, jobs created takes years. Making people afraid of their own neighbors takes one Romo and a week. You see, many people are behind Ibrahim Traoré because he's an exception. He's not a politician. He's building these roads, creating new jobs, and fighting against the terror that came before him. Now, moving ahead, governments also gain as well. We've talked about politicians, we've talked about the terror. Governments do gain too. In a real emergency, it becomes easier to say, we need to control sermons now. We need to control everyone's bank account now. You see, some of that is genuinely needed to stop the unaliving, and I totally support that in cases like in Burkina Faso and the Sahel at large, where this problem is very visible. But then when all this is over, once a government holds that amount of power, it is not easy to give it back. Where have you seen a government easily give power it has? It's very difficult. Now, another group of people who benefit from this chaos are outside players. Groups that fund religious schools get to shape what is taught inside them. And the last group needs only a phone, an account, a caption, and a fight to post about. What they walk away with is not cash, it is attention. And attention becomes money later. Now, none of the group of people we just talked about need to cooperate. They all feed on the same thing. People who no longer trust the neighbor, who prays differently. Which brings me back to that clip and to the question beneath all of this. How does a religious idea turn into a law, and how does the law become an excuse for someone in power? You see, it has happened before, far bigger than one sermon. Researchers at Oxford count close to 11.75 million enslaved Africans taken north and east across the Sahara and in the Indian Ocean over 1200 years. Now, old Islamic law allowed slavery under certain rules, and that trade ran for centuries. It happened and it was wrong, but it never said what the man in that clip says it said. You see, during that epoch, people who were not Muslims and lived under Muslim rule were protected and paid a tax instead. The ones who could be enslaved were captured in wars and raids outside those borders. So there are three different things here. The book the law scholars wrote hundreds of years later, and the ruler who decides how to use that law. Almost every fight in this video happened between those three. So if you heard that clip and have believed it, use your common sense. Now, there is something you need to take note. Every African country bans slavery. No serious scholar of any religion defends slavery. A man who tells you your religion lets you own your neighbor He's not teaching you anything, he's recruiting you. You see, Christianity went through the same 3 steps. It was African long before Europeans arrived in Africa. But when it spread further south, it came with the colonizers, and the mission schools decided which children learned to read. So who profits when faith divides Africa? Most of the people who hold power. And what the rest of us lose is the ability to stand together long enough to ask the boring questions. Where did the road money go? Why is the clinic empty? Who got the contract? And if the man with the microphone tells you God has given you rights over the person praying beside you, put the phone down. He's not offering you faith. He's offering you a fight that somebody else profits from. Africa does not need less faith. It needs one rule book written down and used the same way on everybody, so that no armed group and no single preacher can stand up and claim he speaks for God on his own. So I would not say the real question is whether Africa can beat the people who use religion as a weapon. To me, the real question is whether we can do that and still trust the neighbor who prays differently. Because almost everything we want to build needs that trust. Now, before I leave you, I made another video that would help you understand this one far more better. It is titled, Traore just made Sharia illegal. He's a Muslim. Watch that video, then watch this one again. See you in my next video. Bye.